Critics of the End of Life Choice Act say the law as it stands has problems, let alone an expansion to eligibility provisions. Former National MP Simon O'Connor chaired the Health Select Committee which considered euthanasia and was a vocal opponent of the End of Life Choice Act when it was debated in Parliament. Kia ora, good morning.
Good morning.
So what have we learnt from New Zealand's experience of the law so far?
Well, it's not working as well as people would say, and I don't want to over-egg that. It's not a complete and utter disaster, but just in the recent reports, the quarterly reports don't actually add up with the annual reports. The numbers are wrong. There are 3 deaths out and I think 13 references out.
I have checked that, so I'll come to that in a moment,
yeah.
but continue.
So it's small things like that. Again, when proponents or supporters of the bill say it's working really, really well, it's not. The committee that's involved with reviewing has not been fully established until I think July this year. In other words, Jack, they've struggled to find 3 people to sit on the review committee. And then you've got the question, which I'm pleased you raised earlier. We see about 1% of those seeking euthanasia being referred on to, psychological or psychiatric assessment, which I anecdotally just can't believe it can be that low.
Yeah.
So there's just those issues. But again, I don't want to over-egg it.
Yeah.
But these are questions. I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking about the ending of people's lives. And just 1 death wrongly is 1 too many.
Yeah. Okay. So I went to Te Whatu Ora and checked those things. So they said this about the numbers. Early versions of the 2 quarterly reports were published with a validation error regarding those deaths when compared to the registrar report. So they said they've removed the duplicates and basically they think that it's kind of a teething error with the reporting. So that's just what they said.
Just quickly, only again, not to over-egg it, but we're talking about the life and death of New Zealanders here.
Yeah.
And I expected that the ministry would say it's a validation error or so forth. But actually, if you try to extrapolate that into the wider dynamics, this is serious stuff. We're not decided between Coca-Cola and Pepsi here. So when they make these mistakes, it calls into question just how well are they running the rest of the system.
And regarding that panel, they said recruitment to the committee has been successful each time we needed to find members. They had all required members until October last year when 1 member resigned, another reached the end of their term, and there was a delay appointing new members until after the election. That's what they said.
Yeah. Too many excuses for me. As I say, you're trying to find 3 people to be part of this panel and they've struggled, and I'm pleased you mentioned it. 1 person decided to leave. Why she did that, we're not 100% clear, but again, I don't think you can say it's running smoothly and perfectly when we're having situations like this.
And so talk to us a little bit more about your concerns around the relative lack of consultation with psychiatrists in the process.
Yeah, so one of the provisions in the bill is, of course, for the doctors involved to refer a patient on to make sure that they are mentally competent or not under coercion. And when I look at New Zealand's mental health problems in general, fairly substantial. Your program's talked about it. Long and short, we're seeing, according to the reports, that only 1% or 1 in 100 of these patients seeking euthanasia are being referred on. And I just find that, for me, I can't believe it.
Right.
It's too low is what I'm trying to say.
Isn't the main purpose of the referrals to psychiatrists to assess competency, though?
Oh, it is, absolutely. It's to that. But one of the things in end-of-life care, if you've been in hospices and hospitals, it's incredibly emotional.
Yeah.
You're at the end of your life. So, again, talk to any practitioner. Things like depression, worry, concern, anxiety, these are all fairly normal in the patient, but also around them with their family. So, again, the idea that those who are the doctors, and there's only about 150 of them in New Zealand, have the wherewithal to know that 99 out of 100 are perfectly fine, just doesn't make sense. Again, when we've got a mental health issue in New Zealand.
They obviously have to meet those other criteria,
They do.
those other criteria as well. But so Te Whatu Ora says that regarding the assessments by psychiatrists, in some situations a person will also be seen by a psychiatrist. As you say, those numbers are very low. And this is what Te Whatu Ora says. This will happen if the attending medical practitioner and the independent medical practitioner think the person is eligible and have concerns about whether the person is competent to make an informed decision. So it means if a patient is hallucinating and that kind of thing.
No, I think it's around competency, as you say, but I would make the argument that for those medical practitioners involved, and you've just had an anaesthetist on, psychology, psychiatry is not their expertise, and I would expect a higher number of patients to be referred. I can't give you an exact number, but the idea that only 1 in 100 people, excuse me, is identified as having an issue says either something's been missed or the doctors involved with euthanasia don't have the scope of practice and competency required.
Okay. On average, it takes more than 2 weeks for someone's request to be processed and approved. Last year, 34 people who were assessed by medical practitioners later withdrew their assisted dying applications. Do you accept that shows that patients are empowered to change their minds?
Oh, I think there's always going to be that empowerment. I mean, people are making their decisions. Let's be really, really clear. This is not just the individual's decisions. The very fact that we're here shows that the state, the Crown, has to be involved. There are other doctors and professionals involved in this choice. The other point is we don't have a cool-down period. A lot of other countries will allow an exact period of time. We don't have, a period of time for the patient to consider their decision.
Right.
So the fact that it's taking time and people changing their mind, I think that's a positive.
Right. I mean, 16 days, if that's the average time it's taking, though, that's kind of a cool-down period built into the process.
Yeah, innately, but it's not specifically in the legislation. So again, when a lot of people say, hey, look, there's all these safeguards, there aren't really in the bill. The bill is about, 28 pages. It's a process, lots of reporting. As I say, most other jurisdictions have a cool-down period. So you've made your decision, you want to end your life, now you've got a period of time. So that it's happening is a positive.
So what would be the difference, though, between, if it's taking 16 days, between the time that someone makes an application and the time it's approved? What would be the difference by saying you need a 10-day cool-down period, for example?
Well, we're playing averages here. I mean, under the current legislation in New Zealand, it doesn't have to be 16 days.
But no one's doing it in a day or anything.
No, well, not that we're aware of, and again, we're not wanting to over-egg this stuff, but actually there is no mandated period. So we can sit here and say 16 seems a long time. Well, are we then arguing that 4 days is fine? 3? I mean, again, there's no structure in the legislation.
There's a big difference between those periods, but I get your point. Several official complaints recorded by the Assisted Dying Registrar relate to people or whānau that have felt obstructed by health professionals or facilities in accessing assisted dying. In your view, is it a doctor or facility's role to persuade an eligible person not to die by assisted death?
I think when the person has raised it, so that's really important, that has to remain.
It has to stay.
I think it has to stay. You don't want doctors putting these ideas into very vulnerable people's minds.
Yeah.
But actually, once it's being discussed, people do need to know the options. I mean, palliative care is by and large amazing. And again, in the reports, we learned that 1 in 4 people are not receiving palliative care. And it's like, well, why not? I mean, it's remarkable. And really importantly too, Jack, palliative care is not about being, hooked up to an IV in a hospital. Often it's at times at home, getting the care, the medical care, the emotional, spiritual care that people need.
Is palliative care, as it stands, sufficiently funded and supported?
No, not at all. No, I had a bill in the ballot when I was in Parliament, which never got drawn out. I had bad luck. But no, it's not. Euthanasia's fully funded. Palliative care is not. It's why you've got all these hospice shops and fundraisers. It's a well, to not over-egg this one, it's a bit of a scandal, actually.
So hearing from Dr. Katie Benn there, her concern around the gag clause is that for everything else in healthcare, a doctor is expected to explain all of the potential options to a patient. Why shouldn't an assisted death be included in that?
You're talking about something really dramatic here. At the end of the day, a doctor is going to give you the means or is going to end your life, a very intentional, deliberate action. And as I said a bit earlier, when if you've been around people dying as I have, they are very, very vulnerable. And the idea that a person of authority would put into your mind that assisted suicide's an option is very bad. And just look to Canada, where actually this is happening and people are either taking that choice and their family are aghast, or people often with disabilities, some of the most vulnerable, are saying, how dare you tell me that this is the cheaper, better option to exit my life. So, yeah.
It's not necessarily recommending it, though, is it? It's simply explaining that that is a potential option.
I think, again, it comes to power dynamics. When the doctor comes to you and says, hey, this is an option you should explore, you've got to remember, and it links back to the psychology argument too, people with terminal illnesses at the end of life, often, not always, but often, are going through one hell of a range of emotions.
What do you make of Todd Stevenson's members' bill?
Oh, I can see what he's trying to do, but I think it's almost a distraction. So removing 6 months, I think, is quite dangerous. It now really expands things out. If you're a proponent of the bill or a supporter at the moment, the idea of 6 months gives you some certainty towards the end of life. Now that you open it up, I mean, at what point of a terminal illness? You've just got your cancer diagnosis, you've got 7 years to go. I think most New Zealanders would be uncomfortable with that. But why I say it's a distraction is there's many other people asking for advanced directives. They want mental health included, dementia included. They even want to change the notions of grievous medical conditions. So,
it still includes the word terminal illness, right? You still have to be terminal, which is a kind of fundamental requirement.
Yeah, if you speak to people in the disability community, and let's be really clear, nothing with them without them. In other words, I can't speak for them, but the ones that I've spoken to, a lot of them will fall into that terminal illness. They live with these conditions. And the idea that now there's no 6 month, if you will, fence says that actually, well, their lives are not worth living. A statement's been made in this regard. But again, I say it's a little bit of a distraction because there's a lot of calls to expand much further beyond this little 6-month window. I said advanced directives, for example, to change, you mentioned the gag clauses, all of that.
Yeah. So fundamentally then, as this review proceeds, I accept that you don't support the Act as a whole, but is there one thing that you would like to see prioritised in terms of changes as a result of this review?
Not really. I mean, look, fundamentally, I don't agree with the bill. I suppose my key point to you and listeners is to understand it is not working as smoothly and rightly and easily as possible. When ministries get the numbers wrong, when you have complaints, when your review panel doesn't have all the people required, when only 1% get referred for basically counselling, you've got to start asking questions.
Well, thank you very much for your time. We
you.
appreciate it. Simon O'Connor.